Welcome in on a Monday, everybody. I'm Reed Cowan. So hurricane watch as Debby douses Florida. We're also watching your dollars as Wall Street takes a tumble. Plus, the big question, who will candidate Kamala Harris pick as her running mate? This is CBS News 24/7. Let's go. But right off the top, let's ride our video feeds to take us to Inglewood Beach, Florida, where Hurricane Debby makes landfall. We're talking about winds up to 80 miles an hour. In fact, people in more than 200,000 homes and businesses at this hour warned about record-setting rain, catastrophic flooding, and life-threatening storm surge. In fact, we can tell you electricity is out to hundreds of thousands. We just got this from Florida Governor Ron DeSantis talking about the army of helpers deployed at the ready right now during Debby.
We do have 17,000 linemen that are ready to assist with restoring power immediately. Our National State Guard are ready for search, rescue, and humanitarian assistance as needed. State emergency response teams also fully engaged in preparedness and now our response efforts. We have our Florida Highway Patrol that are ready to enter their Alpha Bravo shifts. That's 24-hour, round-the-clock, nonstop shifts.
They are exhausted already, and it's not even over yet. There are other impacts to tell you about, so listen up if you're going to travel. We got this from FlightAware. This shows the storm hovering over Florida right now in real time. And you can see right there, those planes are actually avoiding Florida altogether. Right now, we can tell you, in the United States, more than 16,000 flights delayed. More than 1,000 and counting are canceled at this hour. So if you plan to fly, just check in with your aircraft carrier. Let's go live now to CBS News' Christian Benavides. He's in Savannah, Georgia. Christian, we understand the storm's path is in Georgia and then going into the Carolinas. Set a scene for us, Christian.
Reed, look, the main concern here in southeast Georgia and the Carolinas is the potential for historic flooding. Now, if the forecast currently holds, this system is going to stall right over southeast Georgia and South Carolina, and it's just going to drench these areas. I spoke to the mayor of Savannah. He told me that this could potentially be catastrophic, that according to the forecast and what he's heard from the National Weather Service, there could be localized flooding of up to 30 inches. And he said that could be really, really bad for these for parts of this community. Now, here in Savannah, they've implemented a curfew beginning at 10 p.m. That's when we're expecting some of the heaviest rain. We have had some rain bands. Right now, it's quiet. There has been constant rain, and there's a little bit of localized flooding around, but there's nothing major happening just yet. There's the potential for this to be historic, catastrophic, not just here in Savannah. About 30 minutes east of us is Tybee Island. It's a community that has just one road in and one road out. We spoke to the city manager there. Take a listen.
We are expecting historic levels of flooding and rainfall. We're probably going to see flooding in all the usual areas, but also flooding in areas that may not necessarily have experience with that on Tybee. We're looking at probably flooding coming in from the ocean as well as the back side of the river, the river side of the island as well.
Reed, this is such a low-lying area. There are so many questions. The most important one is, how do you prepare for something that you've never seen before? Here in Savannah, the mayor says that for the first time in the 30 years that he's been here, they're handing out sandbags to residents. Usually in surrounding communities, they do that, but it is not typical for the city itself to do something like that. But they've got 4 locations up and running. Yesterday, they ran out of sandbags. Today, they're up and running again. We're going to check in with them a little bit later on.
It's going to take neighbor helping neighbor in this one as that storm, just like you said, sits and hovers over that area. Thank you so much. So let's bring in Jessica Brooks right now. That storm surge, the real deal and very dangerous.
Absolutely. I mean, along the coastline, that was our big concern as it hit Florida at a Category 1 this morning. Around 80-mile-per-hour sustained winds just at the center. Now we're keeping our eyes over the state of Florida where it's currently at. This is live cameras coming out of Gainesville, Florida, just in the center. And we continue to keep a close eye on this really devastating storm. Reason being is areas all the way up along the Carolinas, stretching all the way up into communities in Georgia, too. They're going to be dealing with one of the most catastrophic flooding records that we're going to see on record all throughout that region. Now, I want to show you what's happening when it comes to our map. If I could pull up the clouds, here we go. Here's where that storm's currently at, just to the south right now. It is down to a tropical storm, but it's a slow-moving storm, and that causes a lot of issues when it comes to localized flooding and freshwater flooding over those inland areas. Now, I'm going to drop the map real fast, and I want to show you what's happening right behind me. Here's where it's currently at. You just saw that live camera in Gainesville. That's right in the middle of the state. This storm is almost doing an S, so it's losing its energy right now as it moves over our inland areas. The big concern, though, is the track as it moves its way back into the state of the Carolinas and all throughout Georgia. Heading into our Wednesday forecast, it's only expected to move at max around 20 miles within a 12-hour period. That means that storm is going to sit over them, bringing in heavy flooding and rain throughout the next 48 hours. They're expected to see close to around 10 inches of rain fall into communities like Savannah, stretching up into Charleston. We're keeping a close eye on them, too. Sandbags are being filled all along that coastline. We'll have more on that coming up in just a bit, Reed. But like I mentioned, this is going to be one of those record-breaking storms here along those Carolinas, along Georgia. We'll have more on it coming up in just a bit.
All right, Jess, from storms of a hurricane to storms watching our markets. And look at that. You are looking at the big board right now. Breaking economic news. The market's taking a major hit today. Investors really biting their nails. You see the big board there. The Dow down 970 points, now 977. It just shows you how crazy it's been on the markets. Our video monitors bring us CBS News business analyst Jill Schlesinger. Jill, that jobs report Friday having a ripple effect on a Monday.
Yeah, I mean, look, that was a disappointing jobs report, and we created fewer jobs than we thought. We had 114,000, not 185,000. But also in that report, we found that the unemployment rate, it drifted up to 4.3%. Now, 4.3% in isolation, not a bad rate. But to remember this very clearly, it's really about the direction that we're going. And it's the wrong direction when it comes to the unemployment rate. We've had 4 consecutive months where the unemployment rate has gone up. And if we go back to 1960, and we look at when are the times when we've gone up by 4 months in a row, it's usually followed by a recession. So a lot of this selling has to do with some pent-up anxiety over whether the economy is deteriorating faster than we thought it was. Remember, the Fed had these interest rates high for so long to really deal with inflation, but maybe they've kept them high for too long. Maybe the cooling off of the economy has gone to the wrong direction. And that's what you're seeing in some of the action on Friday and also today.
Well, speaking of rates, could they do a course correction, or do they have to wait for that monthly meeting? And then is this a larger sign for the market to come?
Well, they can do whatever they want. We've had many times where the Fed has either raised or lowered rates intra-meeting, between the meetings. That said, it usually happens because something strange is happening in the world. It's not usually a reaction to a day or a couple of days of selling in stocks. So what's happening now is a lot of investors, a lot of economists and strategists, they're looking at that September meeting and they're saying, well, maybe the Fed would look to lower interest rates by 0.5 percentage point at that September meeting, not a quarter. And I think that there's a real interest in seeing how the Fed handles the questions it's going to field, because it does appear that maybe, just maybe, the Fed, which was late in raising interest rates to combat inflation, are they also late in lowering interest rates to avoid a recession? We don't know yet, right? We're not in a recession right now, but that's the fear.
Jill on Money, you have my attention as always. Thank you so much for streaming with us today.
Sure.
So we know the economy will be center stage issue for both candidates who want the keys to the White House. Candidate Kamala Harris expected to announce her choice for a running mate in a matter of hours. So we spent the weekend watching the comings and goings outside of Harris's home, and we know that she interviewed at least 3 top contenders in person. We're talking about Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, Arizona Senator Mark Kelly, and Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro. So once Harris links up with a VP pick, the theme of her week will be Battleground Blitz, and there is an idea of her schedule. You see Harris and her running mates running the map, rallying with voters. They will do that first tomorrow in Philadelphia, and that's where we find CBS News political reporter Aaron Navarro. Aaron, you're watching Governor Shapiro right now. Any sense of where he is in contention?
Oh, Reed, good to be with you. Yes, I'm here outside the governor's house, staking out with other media. Saw the governor leave earlier today. We know that he's at least on that top tier of folks that have been being considered and part of this process the past couple of days. We have no indication yet if that list has narrowed down to Shapiro and someone else just quite yet, but we know, as you mentioned, that Shapiro met with others in person with Vice President Harris over the weekend. The source familiar with the process also cautioned to CBS News, though, that Harris herself did a virtual interview with President Biden when she was ultimately picked in 2020, and that Harris might be doing the same with other potential candidates in terms of a virtual interview yesterday and potentially today as well.
All right, it'll be fascinating. We know that first rally after the pick is right where you are, and we will be leaning on your information. Thank you so much. So there is some confusion today about where Kamala Harris and Donald Trump will actually square off for a debate. So former President Trump says he'll debate the vice president, but only on Fox News. Meanwhile, Vice President Harris says the plan all along was for a debate on ABC News. So over rallies over the weekend, the Trump campaign really doubled down on Harris. Listen.
Crazy Kamala, ultra left, you know that. She was here a week ago, lots of empty seats. But the crowd she got was because she had entertainers. And it all started to unfold when they started to leave about 10 minutes into the speech.
So Donald Trump went on to tell his crowd he doesn't need entertainers because, in his words, he's making America great again. When we return on CBS News 24/7, we go to California. We've got an update on the progress battling the Park Fire, already mounting some historic losses. We're watching the monitors until we come back. Welcome back, everybody. After clashes between protesters and police in Bangladesh, the prime minister there has resigned after a 15-year stretch in office. In fact, reports moments ago that the protests have turned violent are showing right now the protesters are storming the official residence of the now former prime minister. We also understand buildings are on fire as thousands spill into the streets to celebrate her stepping down. This all started because of anger over quota systems for getting government jobs. More than 300 killed in the clashes. Bangladesh's military chief announced an interim government will be formed. Hey, a plea deal for the mastermind of the September 11th terror attacks and his accomplices has gone down in flames. After major pushback from victims' families, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin revoked that plea deal. We are also learning he got rid of the overseer of the war court at Guantanamo Bay and took over direct oversight of that case. Well, after a June Supreme Court ruling and Governor Gavin Newsom's executive order to begin sweeping homeless encampments in San Francisco, that city will resume removal of homeless encampments today. A week into the clearing of encampments, and critics say people are just moving back and forth from one street to the other.
What good is doing that if there's no solution long-term for these individuals? How can you, be more aggressive, but also be aggressive in having a sustainable system?
Well, San Francisco bosses say they offered shelter to those that they removed, but 90% of them that they encountered at the street level said, nope, don't want to go to a shelter. Let's stay in California, where the Park Fire burns on 2 weeks since it started. 625 square miles burned, 564 structures just leveled. In fact, firefighters Monday morning told the public their work over the weekend got that fire to 34% containment. So right now we have CBS crews in many parts of the state. CBS News correspondent Dave Malkoff joins us now. Dave, so many people affected by this one. It really doesn't look like there's an end in sight. And we understand that this fire is now the 4th largest in California history.
Yeah, the 4th largest in California history. That's right. And if you think about that, that's almost 402,000 acres. That's a big, big fire. But if you think back just 9 years ago to 2017 going into 2018, when we had the fire that was the Thomas Fire, the worst fire, biggest fire in California history, setting records. You know where that is, Reed, now? That's the 9th on the list. So we have 8 more fires that are bigger than that record-setting fire back in 2017. And it's all driven by this record heat that we have all around the planet and we have right here in California right now. We're looking for triple digits this week again.
Wow. And Dave, these fire stories are people stories. Tell us about the scene there behind you.
Yeah, this neighborhood was just absolutely ravaged by the flames that came up through this canyon, and fire really makes its way up an uphill slope really fast. So if you get something on the bottom, it's just going to keep on licking up the side of the hill. And all these people, they lost their homes. There was a man who lived in the house right next door to us where he only had seconds inside the house. His wife was trying to grab pictures off the wall. They were trying to get out of there as fast as they could. We talked to another family around here who they went through the fire that was in Paradise, and then they went through this fire. Yeah, we're talking about 6 years apart and that's only 7 miles from here. They lost houses in both of those fires. So, I mean, they've been very unlucky in this, and unfortunately, they lost their cat as well in this fire.
Dave Malkoff, thank you so much, not only for a perspective on the fire, but the toll on the people there. Nobody better. Dave, thank you so much. And so let's talk about the toll. Jess, we understand the air quality there is also a major concern.
Absolutely. And Dave mentioned a lot of numbers when it came to that. I want to dive into the Park Fire real fast just a bit more and talk about how big it means, or how much importance it really lies when you say it's the 4th largest. Keep in mind, just within the past 7 years, 9 out of the 10 largest wildfires in the state of California have happened. And that's since the 1940s, when fire suppression really started happening within the state. But we keep a close eye on air quality. We keep a close eye on all the pink around me, which is red flag warnings, meaning low relative humidity mixed with gusty conditions. The gray right here is showing the air quality is stretching up into the Pacific Northwest too, and excessive heat. That's the big weather story right now over in the West Coast. So let's take a little bit closer look over into the Park Fire, where that smoke plume continues to mostly billow its way off into states like Nevada, all the way over in Idaho. But that's matched up with other fires burning just to the north, areas from Washington all the way down into Oregon. We're keeping a close eye on the smoke in those communities because air quality is in that unhealthy category for many communities, stretching from Eugene all the way up into Seattle. Now, we keep a close eye on them too because that excessive heat is stretching anywhere from the Pacific Northwest all the way down into the south. But turning the page all the way into our Tuesday forecast, we're going to get even hotter down into areas like Nevada, all the way into Southern California, where projected numbers are expected to hit triple digits all throughout that region. So from heat all the way over into the smoke in the atmosphere, we're keeping a very close eye on the West Coast right now.
I've said it before, you're not allowed to take any time off. Jess, thank you so much. Coast to coast and streaming worldwide, CBS News 24/7 goes overseas to tensions in the Middle East between Israel and Iran, and warnings about travel when we come back. Staff at the White House at this hour watching closely a phone call between President Joe Biden and the King of Jordan. The president will take that call from his residence in Delaware and then fly to Washington, where he will meet in the Situation Room with his national security team. Tensions in the Middle East at a boiling point at this hour. Israel's National Security Council in recent hours sent out a travel warning to Israelis abroad. They're warning of a potential attack by Hamas and Hezbollah on Israeli citizens. CBS News foreign correspondent Imtiaz Tayeb live from Beirut. Paint a picture for us what the tone is there in Beirut.
Well, Reed, as you can imagine, the mood is very tense here in Beirut, and yet I'm sure you can also hear a lot of traffic noise behind me as well, as life really does go on here as people wait for something to happen. And they've really been kind of waiting for a week now, and it was 1 week ago today in which an Israeli drone targeted a building in southern Beirut, not far from where I am now, assassinating a very senior figure within Hezbollah's security apparatus. Now, Hezbollah, of course, has vowed to avenge his death, and although we've seen some tit-for-tat skirmishes, much like we've seen over the last 10 months between Hezbollah and Israel along that border area, we have not seen what many have been waiting for, which is Hezbollah's major strike. Now, a part of that has to do with the fact that just a few hours after that assassination here in Beirut, Israel carried out another assassination inside of Iran against the most senior political leader of Hamas, who has been really... You have to excuse me, the traffic noise here. But following that assassination in Iran as well, that really we have both of these enemies, if you will, of Israel promising to strike Israel. That hasn't happened yet, and there's an awful lot of concern when that does. Israel will also retaliate, and that could lead to all-out war.
And as you mentioned, we can hear life going on there behind you. Iran is vowing to take action against Israel. Is that seen as a threat that is imminent?
Yeah, frankly, it is. And I think that's what's so concerning about all of this. And we have to cast our mind back just a few months ago to April, when Israel carried out a strike in Damascus, the Syrian capital, on an embassy building belonging to Iran, killing senior figures of Iran's Revolutionary Guard. Now, that triggered fury from Iran, saying an attack on a diplomatic building is essentially an attack on their homeland. And that resulted in Iran launching 300 drones, cruise missiles, and other munitions in Israel. Now, I was in Tel Aviv at the time when that strike happened, and as you could imagine, it was an extremely tense time. But because Israel has its own missile defense system, but perhaps more crucially, had the military support of the U.S., the United Arab Emirates, neighboring Jordan, and other European countries, it was able to repel that Iranian strike. And so we understand that a lot of these forces are mobilizing again for another strike similar to that from Iran. But the concern is, in the way that we saw in April, where Israel was able to repel all of those munitions being shot at it, if something makes it through and causes significant damage, Israel will have to respond, and all of that could spiral very seriously out of control.
Imtiaz Tayyab, we thank you for your report today, streaming, and wish you safety as well. Thank you so much. When we come back, our streams take us to Florida, where Hurricane Debby has millions of people under hurricane watches and warnings. It's a big day in news. CBS News 24/7 back after the break. Our video feeds take us to Florida right now, where Debby slams the state's Big Bend areas. Hurricane 1. It's bringing heavy rains, flash flooding, and some pretty powerful winds. In fact, look at this video. More than 200,000 people, because of this, are without electricity. The area that is in the red is what we're talking about. That is where it is go time. Not just an inconvenience, it's just downright dangerous, because one of the impacts, major air travel delays and cancellations. We can tell you that right now, more than 16,000 flights are delayed, and more than 1,000 and counting are canceled. Passengers, in fact, at Miami International Airport say they spent hours in these customer service lines just waiting to get out.
Our flight got canceled in Houston twice, they said, because of weather. We had to catch another flight, pay money to catch another flight to get here, only to stand in the line for 2 hours, being moved back and forth, back and forth.
And you know, one of the heartbeats of this broadcast is being in your communities when news happens. And CBS News' Tom Hansen, that's where he is, right in somebody's neighborhood, Horseshoe Beach, Florida. Tom, paint a picture for us.
Hey there, Reed. Well, we just got here on the ground after driving from Crystal River, and I just want to take you guys around what we're seeing, because this is one of the areas that was hit the hardest, where the storm made landfall. So you can see around me that there was a lot of standing water, bent signs from those powerful winds. And as we've known and told you about, reported on all day, this storm is much more concerning because of its slow speed, heavy rainfall, and the potential for flooding. And you may see that this doesn't appear to be too much flooding, but at one point in time, this was, according to the mayor, about 5 feet of standing water. And this is not the end of the road for this community, because at 3 o'clock, in literally 1.5 hours, they are going to get what's called a king tide, and that is going to push water right back up. So people who are able to get things out of their homes right now, they're going to have to evacuate. They're going to shut down this entire area where we are standing because of that king tide, which is going to prove to be difficult for search and rescue, as well as for people trying to pick up what's left of their homes. But this is really the scene here that we're seeing right now, where you can see the remnants of some severe flooding that happened, just moments ago, pretty much, Reed.
And you know, Tom, what I'm not seeing behind you in any of those streets, at least in that neighborhood, are storm drains. Many parts of the country benefit from storm drains. Now that ground is saturated, so any more moisture from the sky, and you've got flooding once again. It just adds to the peril of this situation.
Oh, absolutely. And this is a coastal community, so it is right at sea level. This is one of those places that is most vulnerable in these kinds of weather events. And speaking of these kinds of weather events, this is also one of the exact communities where about a year ago, Hurricane Idalia wreaked serious havoc and caused significant damage in this area. So there are a lot of people here who are still cleaning up from that catastrophic event, only to have to do the same thing again 1 year later. And just to remind you, Reed, that also happened in August of 2023. So we are just days away from that 1 year anniversary as Debby made landfall here.
CBS News correspondent Tom Hansen once again in your communities. When news breaks, you are always there for us, Tom. Thank you so much. You be safe as well, my friend. Okay, so let's bring in Jessica right now. He mentioned something that really educates me a lot. When those storms just hover and they sit,
yes,
that's when the saturation and the flooding can really happen.
Absolutely. Freshwater flooding is a big concern when it comes to hurricanes like this. Now it's a tropical storm, so we need to talk about the before, the during, the after. We now know it hit at about a Category 1, about 80-mile-per-hour sustained winds. You see right here, this is our live cam in Jacksonville. They're about to see some of the heavier rain within the next 20 hours. Now, one thing I want to show right now, too, let's head over to the map. It has to do with the extreme low-level flooding that's going to happen along the coastline, anywhere from Georgia all the way over into the Carolinas. Like Reed mentioned, that storm is going to move slow, and it is going to continue to dump rain into communities where we could see record-breaking numbers right around the corner. We have tropical storm warnings and watches. We have flood watches in effect right now. And as we take a look right behind me, we continue to keep a close eye, not only on Florida now we're starting to keep our eyes just a little bit more north as they are gearing up and preparing for some heavy storm surge and some heavy freshwater flooding in the inland areas. Here's the track right now. Tropical Storm Debby hit at 80 miles per hour just along that coastline. Storm surge was a concern there, but now it's tracking inland. That's going to make it lose some of its energy within the next 2 days, and then it sits slowly just over the shoreline of the Carolinas, stretching down into Georgia, and that's where the big concern is when it comes to record-breaking numbers of heavy historic rain. Now, this is going to be forecasted to be one of the wettest 4-day periods on record, just into cities anywhere from Savannah all the way up into Charleston. We see storm surge as a concern. We see localized flooding as a concern, and we'll continue to keep you updated on this tropical storm as it moves throughout that region. As we head into Wednesday, it's only expected to move just about 20 miles within a 12-hour period. So that, just to put it into perspective, is how slow the storm is currently moving, Reed.
All right, Jess, thank you so much. Let's check some numbers of a different sort. And you are likely today going to be logging on to your 401k, your IRAs, et cetera, because this is what's happening in the world of finance. This is a live look at the big board now. And as you see, the Dow is down in the 800 range down. Stocks took a nosedive as soon as the opening bell rang. The Dow sinking more than 1,000 points in seconds at one point. So a little bit of a rebound right there looking live right now. Tech stocks and bank stocks. If you are invested in tech or banking, you will likely see a very hard hit today. The turbulence on Wall Street follows a major sell-off worldwide. In fact, internationally, Japan's Nikkei indices plummeted for a second day, marking the worst 2-day decline ever. This all stems from Friday's U.S. jobs report, which showed hiring slowing more than expected and the unemployment rate jumping up to 4.3%. Let's talk politics, because politics will be talking about the economy in the days to come. This week, Vice President Harris is going to hit the Battleground State Tour. It's her soon-to-be-announced running mate that will be side to side with her. So here's what we know at this hour, because we know you're wondering who she's going to pick. We know that she has interviewed over the weekend at least 3 top contenders in person. We're talking about Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, Arizona Senator Mark Kelly, and Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro. CBS News Chief White House correspondent Nancy Cordes joins us now from the North Lawn of the White House with more. Welcome, Nancy. It's a busy day at the White House, and we know the clock is ticking to find out who that running mate will be.
Yeah, no question. And the latest we've been told, Reed, is that she is likely to announce her pick sometime tomorrow morning. And that after that, there will be a video that gets released introducing us to whoever this VP nominee is. And then she will appear on stage with that individual at a big rally in Philadelphia, in the biggest battleground state of Pennsylvania, tomorrow night. And then they're off to the races. They're heading to Detroit. They're heading to Wisconsin. They're heading to the Raleigh-Durham area, hitting a variety of battleground states over the course of the next 4 days.
You've covered this for a long time. You've seen how these things go. Can we read anything into the fact that this big announcement happens and then in Philadelphia, the first rally? Can we read anything into that her running mate could be Shapiro, or that it's leaning more Shapiro because of where that first rally is going to be?
You would certainly imagine that she wouldn't pick Philadelphia in Pennsylvania if she wasn't going to choose Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania. That would kind of be a bit of a diss, wouldn't it, if she showed up there on stage with somebody who was not the governor of Pennsylvania when he was one of the finalists. However, campaign officials continue to insist to us that we should not read anything into the choices that have been made about locations that they're heading to. After all, they are going to go the next day to Wisconsin, where next door to Minnesota, where Governor Tim Walz is the governor. And so, they say the reason that they're going to Pennsylvania first is because it's the biggest battleground state, and that's all we can infer.
So fascinating, Nancy Cordes. Thank you so much. We await your reporting tomorrow morning. We appreciate you. All right, when we come back, we are going to contests of a different sort, the kind that unite people, sports, and the Olympic Games. We'll be back in a minute. All right, let's go. Team USA keeps winning at the Paris Olympic Summer Games. Noah Lyles just claimed the title of fastest man alive after winning that 100-meter race. It was a photo finish. Likely you're talking about it today at work. And what a race it was. Almost all of the contestants were within a second of that lead. So let's talk about the medal count. Team USA is propelling to 75, the most of any country by far. And we're right behind China in gold medals. China has 21. The U.S. has 19. CBS Saturday Morning co-host and CBS News and sports correspondent Dana Jacobson joins me now. 100-meter dash was also what appeared on my Apple Watch. Watching that race, that was a hell of a race because I had 100 meters going in my heart at the same time.
You and everybody else. I mean, think about this, Reed. It was 5 thousandths of a second, which is not only hard to say, but hard to sort of comprehend. And I love this. I wish I could take credit for it, but I'm giving the Associated Press credit for it. They pointed out that a blink, which I've done like 5 times already right here, the blink of an eye is an average 20 times longer than what that was in the finish. They had to capture that in a photo. They had to look at that and see. And it explains why, like Noah Lyles at the end, he thought that he had been beaten. He thought that he was going to get silver in it. Remember, going in, he hadn't won any of his heats, so he was not the fastest man in the world at that point. And you got to love seeing a moment like that because the joy, the fear of you don't know, have you won, have you not? And then Noah Lyles knowing that he won. And then he went back to the Noah Lyles that a lot of us have gotten to see, where he was like, see, America, I told you I got this. So thinking he didn't win, and then, yeah, America, I got this.
And listen, I don't even reach for a Big Mac that fast. That was heroic. Okay, so let's talk about heroics of a different sort. Women's gymnastics. Women's gymnastics. To me, the emerging theme of these games really is girl power.
It is. The entire Olympics really has been an amazing platform for women's sports, which already was in the forefront. And amazing women getting it done in every way, shape, and form. So I think there were people that are disappointed that we didn't see gold medal performances today from Simone Biles, from Suni Lee, from Jordan Chiles, but they medaled. I mean, like, we forget it is competition. There are other athletes out there that are good too. Simone Biles got the silver on the floor. Suni Lee fell in the balance beam, but got back up there. And man, she didn't just fall. It was a hard fall, was able to get back up. Actually, Simone and Suni both said that the lack of crowd noise in there, the lack of music was really disturbing to them. It was too quiet. And traditionally at these meets, they have music or they have crowd noise, something in the background. Even throughout here until this individual round, they had it. And that's part of the routine that athletes get so used to. That's what they're used to in the gym when they're practicing. That's what they're used to in other meets. So that may have played a role in both of them falling in the beam. And then on the floor, it's also great to see someone like Simone, who is the GOAT, and everybody knows it, but paying tribute to Rebecca Andrade, who won from Brazil. They know each other. They see each other at other meets. She got it done. She went out there by such a small amount. And even that part of the competition here is really a beautiful thing to see with athletes who are fiercely competitive.
Right, women supporting women, and she may not have gotten the gold medal, but that was gold standard citizenship and behavior. I'm so proud of her. And so proud of you. We're so grateful for you. Your coverage has been a joy.
Keep it coming. Reed.
Right. Thank you so much, Dana. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right, so independent presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy says he dumped a dead bear cub in New York City's Central Park in 2014. That's a change in direction in the broadcast, right? Well, he admitted the act in a video posted online with none other than Roseanne Barr. We got to show you. Watch.
A woman in a van in front of me hit a bear and killed it, a young bear. So I pulled over and I picked up the bear and put him in the back of my van because I was going to skin the bear. I had an old bike in my car that somebody asked me to get rid of it. I said, let's go put the bear in Central Park and we'll make it look like he got hit by a bike. It'll be funny for people. So,
all right, there's that. That's just part of the story. Kennedy said the New Yorker asked him about this incident prior to this video and was planning on doing a big to-do article about him that would have painted him in a not-so-flattering light. Well, after clashes between protesters and police in Bangladesh, the prime minister there has resigned, 15 years in office, and now out. In fact, reports moments ago that the protests have turned violent. In fact, we understand that protesters have stormed the official residence of that now former prime minister. We understand buildings are on fire. Our partners there telling us that thousands are spilling into the streets to celebrate her resignation. Now, let's go back in time. This all started because of anger over quota systems for getting government jobs. These clashes have been deadly. We understand more than 300 killed. Bangladesh's military chief announced an interim government will be formed. We're watching closely. Well, a plea deal for the mastermind of the September 11th terror attacks and his accomplices, that's gone down in flames after major pushback from victims' families. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin revoked the plea deal. We are also learning he got rid of the overseer of the war court at Guantanamo Bay and took over direct oversight of that case. Well, after a June Supreme Court ruling and Governor Gavin Newsom's executive order in California to begin sweeping homeless encampments, the city of San Francisco resuming removal of those encampments today. A week into clearing the encampments, and a lot of critics say people are moving back or maybe even just moving one street over. So we continue watching this in San Francisco, really a litmus test for how that Supreme Court ruling will actually play out in our streets. Hurricane Debby has made U.S. landfall. In fact, a lot of people who live along the Atlantic coast preparing as best they can. Charleston, South Carolina right now, and we can tell you people stocking up, helping one another, getting sandbags onto the streets where the storm surge is about to add up. Local officials telling people just get out, help your neighbor, fill a bag, then fill one for your neighbor. In fact, at this hour, they've given out more than 17,000 bags. And about 25 miles northwest in a place called Somerville, you can see an animal rescue center. They evacuated more than 300 pets into the hands of adopters or fosters who are now gathering there to make sure the pets are taken care of in the storm. Now, off the Gulf Coast near Boca Grande, Florida, the U.S. Coast Guard rescued 2 boaters who were adrift at sea. These are some of the images of that. That vessel lost its sail as Hurricane Debby started making its way into that part of the country. In fact, you can see the Coast Guard footage showing just how nasty those waters are and how difficult really it was to maneuver in that hurricane weather. But they are pros. They know how to do it. They live in Florida, after all. Thankfully, these boaters did not sustain any injuries. Florida knows hurricanes like Dana knows sports in Paris, Jess.
Absolutely. And as we take a live look right now from Florida, this is just north of Jacksonville. You see the raindrops just over our live cams there. We need to talk about the before, the during, and the after of this storm because it hit as a Category 1 as it made its way inland just along the Gulf Coast of Florida. Now what we're keeping a close eye on is all the tropical storm warnings and advisories that are issued all throughout that region as we keep our eyes also closely on areas of South Carolina stretching down into Georgia just along that coastline. Right behind me, I want to show you the track of it. Here's where it's currently at, just over the state of Florida, starting to weaken since it's making its way inland, but it's going to gain some strength just a little bit as it slows down over the coastline near South Carolina. By Wednesday, for example, we're only expected to watch it move about 20 miles in a 12-hour period. Keep that in mind. It's a very slow-moving storm, and that causes a lot of issues, not only with storm surge, but also freshwater flooding in those inland areas. We'll continue to keep a close eye on this, with that total rainfall really adding up within the next 48 hours. For now, I'm going to send it over to you, Reed.
Well, it's one of the greatest challenges now facing the American family farm: aging. The average age of a farmer in the United States is now 58, with a third of our farmers over the age of 65. In our Eye on America, CBS's Meg Oliver has a look at an innovative program to cultivate the next generation of American farmers.
On an acre of land in Cream Ridge, New Jersey, Christina Couch is a one-woman force.
What are you growing here?
These are sugar snap peas.
And how tall will they get?
About 6+ feet.
Months of prepping, planting, and nurturing 7 days a week have turned her brown field into tidy rows of lush vegetables and herbs.
Last time we were here, they were all the way down to the ground. Now they're up to our shoulders.
Couch, a former cook, is now a newly minted farmer.
We're growing a lot of specialty varieties, so when you go to a restaurant, you see a fancy, colorful beet or a beautiful garnish or a delicate herb.
At 26 years old, she's more than 3 decades younger than the average farmer in the U.S.
Nearly half of the nation's farms are owned by farmers 65 or older, making them the oldest workforce in the country. Why is it so hard to break into farming?
Well, many people are not raised on a farm or don't.
Professor and third-generation farmer Bill Lubick is Couch's mentor and actively recruiting the next generation at the Beginner Farmer Training Program at Rutgers University in New Jersey.
We absolutely have to have a next generation of farmers to produce food for us.
The 3-phase program begins with online classes covering farming basics, followed by hands-on training. Select students develop a farm business plan and put it into action. They can rent land from the program with access to equipment and agricultural experts.
The radiation from the sun will break that down. And we are attracting a very diverse group of people into our program. 60% are women, almost that many percentage are minorities.
And you just pluck it right off.
Novices like Couch, many without a farm background, are seeking customers in a non-traditional route.
What does your generation bring to farming?
We're just going about farming a bit differently, a little bit against the grain, and leveraging things like social media, like fundraising. Just let the ground get nice and moist. And just building communities that people are attracted to, want to support young farmers.
Hola. On this day, greens that were picked by Couch just hours earlier were delivered to Jasper Stone Restaurant.
This is little gem lettuce.
This is where she used to work as a line cook and realized her dream of farming.
I just had this light bulb moment that I could grow this and help fill the gap so that we don't have to get produce from so far away to put on the tables at restaurants.
Now she's proud to have her locally grown produce turned into delicious salads.
It is the hardest job I've ever had. It is really, really difficult. But at the end of the day, I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Cultivating tomorrow's food supply with growing satisfaction. For Eye on America, I'm Meg Oliver in Cream Ridge, New Jersey.
That's it for us at CBS News 24/7. We leave you mindful of millions of people under hurricane watches and warnings in Florida. Let's look at some live pictures of some of the beaches: Inglewood, St. Augustine, and elsewhere there in Florida. The storm surge expected to bring many troubles to many people in the United States. We'll be watching it 24/7, coast to coast, and streaming worldwide. Thank you so much for watching.